Here we are at the beginning of video 1.1, and we begin with the distance formula. And we just need to remember that the distance formula is the square root of the x values subtracted from each other and then squared. Likewise, do the same thing for the y values, and that is the formula for the distance. So with that in mind, all we need to do is come up with the 2 points and then go from there. Number one of the points is at 5, -1. The other point is at 3, -5. And so all we need to do is put it into this formula to find the distance. So the distance would be 5 minus 3, quantity squared, plus -1 minus a -5, quantity squared, which gives 2 squared plus 4 squared, which equals 4 plus 16, which equals the square root of 20, or 2 root 5. Number 2 and 3 are very similar. We're trying to find the distance, and we're actually given the points. So number 2, the points would be, make this 0 minus a -2, and 3 minus 3, quantity squared. That becomes 2 squared plus 0 squared, or 4 plus 0, which equals the square root of 4, which actually equals 2. And example number 3, which concludes this type of problem, will look like this. Quantity -5 minus 1, quantity squared, plus the quantity -2 minus the -6, quantity squared. So this will become -6 squared plus 4 squared, which is the square root of 36 plus 16, which equals the square root of 52, which equals 2 square root of 13. Continuing on, number 4, we are trying to determine whether or not the 3 points that are given determine the triangle, to determine whether or not it is a right triangle. And so we have 3 different distances, and so we will need to calculate each one of those distances. We begin with AB. AB would equal the quantity 7 minus 1, quantity squared, and the quantity 3 minus 1 squared. And so that will be 6 squared plus 2 squared, square root of 36 plus 4 equals the square root of 40, which equals 2 square root of 10. Then we can look for BC. Using the distance formula there, we would get the quantity 7 minus 6, that quantity squared, and 3 minus a -2, the quantity squared, which will equal 1 squared plus 5 squared, or 1 plus 25, which equals the square root of 26. Then finally we need to find AC, which would be the quantity 6 minus 1 and the quantity -2 minus 1. And that ends up equaling the square root of 34, which will not simplify any further. Now, between these, the longest distance here is AB. So if this were a right triangle, this would have to be the hypotenuse. So what we can do is we can quickly check this. Square root of 26 squared plus square root of 34 squared will equal 26 plus 34, which equals 60, which does not equal 2 root 10 squared. And so as soon as we see this, we know the answer is no, this is not a right triangle, and so we are finished. Continuing, example number 5 says find all points having an x-coordinate of 9 whose distance from the point 3, -2 is 10. Okay, so we know the distance from here to here is 10. So we just need to put that in to the distance formula. Distance equals 9 minus 3 quantity squared plus y minus -2 quantity squared. So 10 would equal 6 squared plus, I'm going to go ahead and FOIL that out, y squared plus 4y plus 4. Now this is equal to 36, and we can add to the 4, so we will get y squared plus 4y plus 40. And to get rid of the square root, we can square both sides, so that y squared plus 4y plus 40 equals 100. And then solving this, since we do have a quadratic, we need to get this to one side, or all to one side, and set it equal to 0. So we get y squared plus 4y minus 60 equals 0. And I believe that if we can factor this, be y plus 10 and y minus 6 equals 0. So that when we set each one equal to 0, we get y equals a -10 or y equals 6. And so what would the points be? Since we know the x value has to be 9, it'll either be 9, 6 or 9, -10. Okay, number 6. We start to get into midpoints. Midpoints simply are finding the average of each of the values. So number 6, we're going to find the average of 7 and -16, which are the x values, and that will become the new x value. And then when we find the midpoint of the y's, we take the y values and find those averages. And so this would be -9 over 2 and -15 over 2. Since neither of those will simplify, then that will be our answer. Example number 7. We have -1, -10 is one endpoint, and 2, -12 is the midpoint. We need to find the other endpoint. Well, what we need to do here is we need to realize that if this is the endpoint and we're looking for the other endpoint, that will be used x and y. And so we need to find the average of this one, and this one will become this. So in other words, -1 plus x over 2 will have to equal 2, which is the x value. So solving for this, multiply both sides by 2, and then adding 1, we get x equals 5. Likewise, doing that for y, we get -10 plus y all over 2 will equal -12. Multiply both sides by 2, and then add 10 to both sides, so that y equals -14. And finally, before I end this particular video and start again, it asks us to plot the point in the xy plane and then tell which quadrant or what axis that the particular point lies on. And we are asked to plot the point 6, -4. 6, -4 means go right 6 and down 4. So we'll go right there. That will be the point 6, -4. And which quadrant? Quadrant 1 is in the upper right hand corner, then it goes clockwise. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we show the quadrants with Roman numerals.